Safety is a hard position to evaluate. There are so many different shapes and sizes and skill sets among all the safeties in the NFL that at times it almost seems impossible to compare them to one another. You've got elite free safeties like Eddie Jackson that have range and ball skills down the field, but not a whole lot of physicality against the run. You've got great run defenders in the box like Von Bell who can handle all that dirty work between the tackles, but aren't exactly stars in coverage. And you've got hybrid safeties slash slot defenders like Tyrann Mathieu that give your defense a lot of flexibility with personnel groupings, but because of their lack of size, they might get beat up pretty badly by tight ends that are 6 to 8 inches taller than them. Every different style of safety has their own strengths and weaknesses, and truth be told, a lot of safeties really only fit in a handful of systems around the league anyway. But every once in a while there comes a talent that transcends every style, every role, and every limitation of those roles to become something more. Those kinds of players are not just elite box safeties or free safeties or nickel safeties, but rather they're elite at everything. To me, that next transcendent talent is already here, and his name is Derwin James. When I study the Chargers defense, it's hard not to stare at him on every single play. He lines up deep, he lines up in the box, he's frequently in the slot, he takes snaps at linebacker and at edge rusher, and he excels at every single one of those roles no matter the situation. In fact, when I took a sampling of his alignment data and compared it to 9 other really good safeties across the league that all play in wildly different systems, Derwin's flexibility as a player really shined through. Out of all the data that I collected, James had the highest percentage of snaps as an edge rusher, the third highest snaps in the box as either a safety or as a linebacker, and the highest snap rate in the slot as well. He had the lowest snap rate among the group as a deep safety at just under 19%, of course, but when you consider how much he moved around in every other area of the field, he still showed exceptionally rare versatility. I think that ability to adapt to different spots really helped Gus Bradley kind of reinvent his scheme last season and cover up a lot of the holes on LA's roster, and believe me, they had plenty of major holes. For instance, Bradley's system in the past has usually centered around cover 3 looks most of the time, where you've got one free safety deep and one strong safety in the box, and in that kind of system, you really can't run it without having a very fast, very rangy, and most importantly, an instinctual free safety that can cover both of the deep seams at the same time. I've gone over the importance of a true free safety before when talking about Earl Thomas, Eddie Jackson, and Ed Reed on this channel, so if you've been here a while, you probably know what they bring to the table already. And on top of that, you can also probably guess that the Chargers starting free safety last season, Jaleel Addae, was nowhere close to being as good as any of them. Gus Bradley's entire defensive philosophy had to be reworked to compensate for that lack of a true center fielder, because for the first time in a long time, he couldn't rely on his free safety to be the main pillar of his system. Ed, Earl, and Eddie all were legit 4-4 sprinters that could cover an immense amount of ground in a short period of time. But Addae, he's not fast at all. He runs in the mid 4.6s, and quite frankly, he doesn't have good enough instincts to make up for that lack of speed either. So as far as free safeties in a base cover 3 system go, he's probably the worst possible fit you could imagine. So with Derwin James as the only safety on the entire roster that had the size to play in the box, the quickness to play in the slot, and the rare 4.4 speed to play deep, what was Gus supposed to do? He needed James to patrol near the line of scrimmage because he needed someone who could play the run and match up with tight ends, but Bradley didn't have any other viable free safeties on the team that could actually survive in the deep middle without being exposed. It was sort of a desperate, no-win situation for him as a coordinator, but in that desperation, Bradley managed to come up with a brilliant new way to maximize his team's strengths. Out went his tried and true cover 3 that was built around the deep safety, and in came a new hybrid cover 6 that was built around the box safety instead. In this new hybrid system, Derwin never really lined up based on the strength of the offensive formation, like most box safeties would do when they follow tight ends around, but rather James's role would change from snap to snap based on how many eligible receivers were lined up on his side of the field. As an example, Derwin pretty much had one job and one job only 75% of the time, and that was to take away the number 2 receiver on his side. And for those that aren't aware, I don't mean taking away a team's quote-unquote number 2 receiver like we call Will Fuller the number 2 to DeAndre Hopkins, or let's say Tyler Boyd the number 2 to AJ Green. I mean, you literally count from the outside in 1, 2, 3, and the second guy you count is the number 2 receiver on that side. Most of the time, that number 2 guy was Derwin's responsibility, whether it was a receiver, a tight end, a running back, a fullback, or anything in between. If that player was the second eligible receiver in from the boundary, that was his guy and he was going to stick to him like glue no matter what. And Gus designed his usage of Derwin that way to make it easier on Jaleel Addae because he was clearly the weakest link on that entire unit. Now Addae didn't have to worry about where the strong side of the formation was, he didn't have to read multiple seams at once or have to judge if he needed to jump something short over the middle instead of bracketing deep. All of his decision making was basically done for him because he knew that no matter what, those two backside defenders, Derwin and whatever corner was lined up next to Derwin, would handle that side. All Addae had to do was cover one seam and that's it, which is far less responsibility than most free safeties have. You can see how that adjustment worked for them really well against Buffalo on this play late in the second quarter. James is technically lined up on the strong side of the offensive formation here because he's over the tight end, but really all that matters in terms of his responsibility on the play is the fact that the tight end is the number 2 receiver on that side. Addae, as you can see, is shaded way over to the other side and he's not even remotely paying attention to that other half of the field. In a true cover 3, he'd be lined up more towards the middle and playing both seams, but in a hybrid cover 6, like I said before, he's basically just playing that 1/4 zone over the top on the slot side and letting James and Trevor Williams handle everything else. And because James is such a damn good athlete and because he's got such tremendous arm length, even though the tight end has a leverage advantage against him on this seam route, Derwin was still able to close ground quickly late in the route to reach around that tight end's frame and break up the pass. He doesn't need bracket help from the deep middle. He doesn't need help from a dropping linebacker inside. He's taking away that backside seam on an island all by himself to prevent a huge first down in a critical situation. And that just goes to show the kind of trust that Bradley had in Derwin to take away those vertical routes with no safety net behind him. Because if he misplayed this or was late to the ball by even a few inches and then missed the tackle, that's pretty much a guaranteed touchdown. You can see examples of this sort of Derwin James versus the world kind of philosophy in every single game the Chargers played last season. Whether it was keying in on and driving on James White immediately in the flat because he happened to be the number 2 receiver on his side after Philip Dorsett motioned across the field, which was a really nice tackle for loss in the open field by the way. Or another example earlier in the year against the Cardinals where he was lined up alone on the weak side edge with nobody to cover, so he was showing blitz, but then once the tight end motioned across to become the new number 2 on his side, he bumped back out and took him on as a man coverage assignment. And with him reading pretty much only this tight end and nothing else while Addae played over the top on the other side of the field, he was able to diagnose and kill this play action screen before it could even get going. Again, the fact that he could account for and shut down the number 2 passing option of any play by himself, regardless of the matchup in front of him, was a major asset for this defense, and it made everyone else's jobs a hell of a lot easier because they had less to worry about. James shouldered the load on nearly every snap so that they didn't have to, and it worked brilliantly. And by the way, just in case you're wondering what happened whenever offenses just left Derwin completely by himself with no number 2 option on his side at all, hoping that he would just kind of sit there in no man's land with no assignment down the field, that's really where he made most of his biggest plays behind the line of scrimmage. When offenses gave James no options to actually cover anyone, that's when Gus Bradley really took the leash off and gave Derwin free rein to just blitz like crazy. If offenses weren't going to give him any work to do, he was going to force the issue and find work for himself, and boy did he ever find work. He's so explosive and so fast and so physical that even if he was coming off the edge from way outside the tackle box, he could still beat running backs to the hole on the other side and take them down for losses every single time. I mean, the fact that the Chargers had the 3rd lowest blitz percentage in the entire league, and yet Derwin still was tied for the league among all safeties with sacks and hurries, and was 2nd in the league in total stops, and was tied for 6th in tackles for loss, kind of says everything you need to know about how damn good a blitzer he was. That is insane efficiency for someone who was honestly not blitzed that often, and it just goes to show how truly valuable Derwin was to this defense in 2018. He did everything for that unit and then some. Joey Bosa missed over half the season, Corey Liuget only played in 6 games, Denzel Perryman only made it to week 10, and by the end of the year they were putting 7 DBs on the field basically at all times because they almost completely ran out of linebacker depth. The Chargers had their usual injury issues that seemed to tank their seasons every other year, but despite all of those obstacles and all of their normal problems with depth, the team and the scheme still held up to finish in the top 10 in both pass defense efficiency and rush defense efficiency. That was a truly incredible accomplishment, and it was only possible, in my opinion, because they were held together by Derwin James. I haven't seen a rookie safety enter the league and make this big of an impact this early since Eric Berry almost a decade ago. And to be honest, if I were a betting man based on everything I just saw in 2018, Derwin is going to be just as good as Berry was in his prime. I'm talking perennial Pro Bowl, All-Pro, fast track him to a retired number and a gold jacket kind of greatness. Out of all the rare breeds in the NFL, this dude's one of the rarest, and I know that because his coaches literally built their entire defense around him in his first year in the league. That almost never happens. Safeties don't often get the respect they deserve, I understand that, and especially so when that safety plays for a team that doesn't get a whole lot of media attention even when they're winning. But I'm telling you right now, everyone needs to pay attention to Derwin James. We're witnessing the beginning of a legendary career. And if the tragedy and what-ifs of Eric Berry's own legendary career taught me anything, it's to recognize greatness when we see it, and to appreciate that greatness while we still can. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode and being patient during my absence while I took a little post-draft break for myself. And I also want to thank our sponsor that kind of helped keep my lights on during that time and make this video possible in the first place, Scentbird. If you haven't heard of them before, Scentbird is a monthly subscription service where you can try out anything out of the hundreds upon hundreds of colognes and perfumes and skincare products that you choose each month to be delivered right to your door. And it's not just brands that you've never heard of either, it's exclusive partnerships with all the biggest labels out there, including Hugo Boss, Gucci, Tom Ford, Burberry, I mean, you name it, they've got it. So if you wanted to try out any fragrance for a particular season, but you don't want to actually spend the money to go out and buy a whole bottle without even knowing if you're going to like it first, that's where Scentbird comes in. You get a 30-day supply of whatever product you choose each month, which is way bigger than the trial vials at the store, by the way. You test it out, and if you don't like it, no harm, no foul. It's just a sample bottle, and you can try out another one without having to commit $40, $50, or $60 to a product you're never going to use again. For instance, Scentbird sent me 5 different sample sprayers that I picked out with a nice little twist top on there, and I found out that I really didn't like either of the Bulgari fragrances at all because they kind of smacked me in the face a bit and were really overwhelming. But I loved both of the English laundry scents, which were Notting Hill and Cambridge Night by the way, because they were a lot more subtle and less aggressive, but still smelled great and were very well balanced. And now I know that if I want a full bottle of something, I'm willing to go spend full price on those English laundry scents, and I can avoid blowing money on stuff that I don't like and would probably never wear again anyway. So that's really where the value of this kind of subscription comes from for people who like to wear cologne frequently, because they can kind of prevent themselves from wasting money in the long run. So if you're interested in trying out fragrances, or you want to sample some new skincare products, or both, head on over to Scentbird at the link in the description below and use promo code BRT30 for 30% off your first cologne, which means it's only $10. And by the way, if you are an avid wearer of cologne and you have any recommendations for me to try over the summer, let me know in the comments below because I'm always looking for new scents, and now obviously I have a better and more convenient way to try them. As for channel news, since I know it's been a while since I posted, I also wanted to let you guys know that everything is okay. I just needed a little bit of time off after the draft to handle some stuff in my personal life, and with each one of these episodes taking between 60 to 80 hours to make, it can be difficult to stay on schedule with work while also having to deal with general life bullshit. So thank you guys for being so understanding and supportive and ever the more patient with me, obviously. You're an amazing group of people, and I can't wait for you guys to see everything that I've been working on for the rest of this offseason, because I think you're really gonna like it. So with that, I'll be back soon with another new episode, and until then, thank you guys again, and I'll see you later.